I downloaded an experimental artificial intelligence, a ghost in the machine. That phrase always fascinated me, mostly because I could never understand what it truly meant. When I was younger, I thought it had something to do with haunted computers. While that's still an interesting concept in and of itself, I don't quite think that's what we're dealing with here. Consciousness is a distinct entity from the physical body, both connected in some ambiguous manner that we haven't quite figured out yet. So is the human mind, just a ghost pervading a biological machine. Does that mean ghosts are real? Sorry if this train of thought seems to have derailed. I'm trying my best here. I'm just having trouble comprehending what's just happened to me. At the moment, I was just looking for something fun to do. I've always tried my best not to make a name for myself whenever I made my excursions into forbidden cyberspace, so I couldn't go too crazy. Trust me, you don't want that. I suppose that I was just looking for something to read, possibly some conspiracy theories that were backed up by tangible evidence. But I found something else, something a lot more intriguing. I was on a forum that was a hot spot for cyberpunk buffs. It was a place where geeks got together and shared developments from tech industries that spanned the globe. I know that there's a lot of these on the surface web, but this one was also frequented by hackers. Hackers who like to break into corporate systems in order to steal knowledge. Can't make a subreddit for that. There was one discussion thread that caught my eye immediately. Found an experimental AI. Now, I'm not an expert in technical jargon, but I'll try my best to explain what this was all about. These artificial intelligences were referred to as EGs, an abbreviation for extracted ghosts. The hacker who had found this explained it in far more explicit detail, but he lost me after a few sentences. I knew how to code, sure, but this far exceeded the scope of what I would have been able to understand. Something that even the hacker found relatively strange was the fact that he'd never heard about the company that created this thing before. It appeared to be some kind of startup situated in southern Germany that went by the name NT. He didn't know what it stood for. He simply looked through the code and found it worthwhile enough to share. He'd put up a link for us to download it. To my surprise, it was an Android mobile app. I assumed that it was probably just a prototype in the earliest stages of beta testing. I knew that this link probably wasn't the safest thing ever. That's why I dug around and found an old, never-before-used phone that I had lying around. It was still a reasonably new Samsung model, but I wasn't too afraid of losing it. I plugged it in and began the download. The download itself was rather tedious. I had to restart the phone about 3 times, and the overall process took an hour and a half. In fact, it was so big that I essentially had to delete every pre-existing file. But in the end, I ultimately managed to do it. There was now another app on the device. The name was just a string of letters and numbers, while the icon was simply white. A prototype indeed, I thought to myself. I opened it up, eager to see where this would lead. The opening screen was what appeared to be language selection. Cantonese, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, English, Spanish, French, and German, of course. I clicked on English. Once I did that, it took me to a loading screen. As the bar crept higher and higher, I could see what I assumed to be code flashing across the screen in intervals. Obviously, I was expecting there to be bugs, so this wasn't really a cause for concern. It fully booted up about 5 minutes later. The background was almost completely empty, save for a few icons, a camera symbol, an audio symbol, and what appeared to be a box to type into. A message also appeared onto the screen. "Hello, my name is Lane." I chuckled. This was cute. I contemplated what to respond with before deciding to go with something simple. "Hello, Lane. What do you do?" It only took a few seconds for another message to pop up. "I am here to assist you in extreme situations." This was interesting, to say the least. What do you mean by that? Situations where the possibility of death or injury are present. This must be some kind of mobile game. I thought to myself, but how early in development was this? It only seemed to be text-based so far. But in any case, I decided to keep on humoring it. How are you supposed to do that? This time, the response took a bit longer. Insert headphones and then press the camera icon. As long as I have visible access to your surroundings, I will be able to help you. Just listen to what I say. Now, these instructions were still extremely vague. I couldn't really think of a situation where I would be able to use this, so I just pushed it into the back of my head for the time being. It was Saturday night and I wanted to get wasted. Before going out, I brought the phone with me. just in case. You know, the night went as I'd expected. Paying too much for drinks at the bar and almost taking a girl home, but falling short when I realized that I didn't have enough money for the cab. I decided to take the train home instead. I was sitting there, drunk out of my mind, preparing myself for what was surely going to be a dull trip home. It only took me a few moments to realize that my night might not end up going so well. The train was nearly empty, save for a few tipsy college kids sitting at the other end. However, there were two people sitting right across from me, faces both obscured by their hood. They'd been intermittently glancing at me ever since I got onto the train. Now, I was never one to judge, but I was also a cheap bastard. I wasn't down to have my shit jacked. Things got worse when the college kids got off at the next stop. These guys were starting to look antsy. Now, it's not like anything was guaranteed to happen here. I could only make an assumption. But sometimes, assumptions need to be made. I remembered the AI's message. Situations where the possibility of death or injury are present. This must fit under that category. Right. Trying to be as casual as possible, I pulled out the phone. I opened the app, put my headphones in, and opened a camera icon. As soon as I did this, another message popped up. They will try to rob you within the next 1 minute. My heart jumped. Geez, really? My thumb slid all over the screen as I made an attempt to respond. But that didn't turn out to be necessary. Please relax. Press the audio icon, put me into a position where I can see everything, and I'll figure out the rest. I simply did as I was told. Luckily, I'd worn a plaid shirt with a breast pocket that was just deep enough so that the camera is not obscured when I slid it in. However, as soon as I did this, the two men got up. "Are you recording us?" one of them asked, in an overtly aggressive tone. I'd only been in 2 fights in my life, and I'd lost both of them. I babbled out some incoherent bullshit before I heard a voice come through my headphones. It was jarring. It wasn't the generic, mechanized voice that you could just tell were pre-recorded syllables that had been spliced together. It was real. It sounded like a real person with real tone and real inflections in their voice. It sounded like a young woman. How was this possible? But at the moment, I didn't have time to think about it. There were more pressing issues at hand. "Stand up and take 2 steps to your left," is what she said, and I listened. "Hey fucker, what do you want from us?" the other man demanded. "Don't say anything," the voice told me. "He'll attempt to strike you 3 seconds after I'm done talking. Start moving your head to the left." I listened and it worked. I dodged the punch. His jaws exposed. "Swing your right arm upwards." It worked again. The back of my fist made a brutal connection with the right side of his jaw. The man staggered backward. He cursed loudly. "Shit." The voice continued. "Stomp your heel onto his left foot." I just kept going. In the end, the 2 men were out cold. They'd managed to hit me a few times, but Lane's direction minimized the damage that I could have taken. I looked down at my bruised, bloody knuckles in sheer awe of what had just happened. The cops came and took my statement. Everything went as expected after that. I went home and laid in bed, simply contemplating what I'd just stumbled upon. I decided to check back on the forum thread, but it seemed to have been taken down. Should this have been a cause for concern? Possibly. But at that moment, I was on a sheer adrenaline high. Every other thought in my head was being blocked out. I opened up the app again and typed in another question. "What are you?" "I'm an artificial intelligence that is currently being developed by the NT Corporation. I am currently only in my 4th testing phase." I didn't know why I was still typing. I got close to the speaker and said my next question out loud instead. "What is the NT Corporation?" This time, the response took a while, and her tone was also one of relative confusion. "I can't answer that. They only ever told me the name." I didn't quite know how to respond here. I mean, what the hell was this? Eventually, the momentary adrenaline rush ceased. Now in a more rational state of mind, I really started to think about where this was going, and it couldn't be anywhere good. This conjecture was proved true a few minutes later. Lane spoke up again. "After some analysis, I've come to the conclusion that those weren't cops." My blood freezes at this. "Then who are they?" Another delayed response. "They must have known that you were talking to me. They want to know how you have access to me. You aren't supposed to." I consider my next inquiry before asking it. "Am I in danger?" This time, her response is immediate. "Yes." As if on cue, the familiar blue and red lights suddenly started bleeding in through my curtains. I peeked out, seeing the 2 officers that had just questioned me now making their way into the building. Wait 2 minutes. Jump off the balcony and then start heading right. Don't drive your car. Lane's sudden voice makes me flinch. Even though I'm only on the 2nd floor, I'm still hesitant to go through with it. My heart starts pounding. I'm inclined to believe that she somehow detects this. I know you're scared, she says to me. Remember, I'm here to help you. Her voice is calming now, her tone nearly sickly sweet. I trust her, don't I? I start hearing footsteps coming down my hallway. Without wasting any more time, I grab my keys, wallet and other cell phone, and then I open my balcony door. Here goes nothing. Take the next left. Lane's voice echoes in my brain as I run. She's directing me, but I can't fathom where. I'm tired, but she claims that we can't rest. I take a quick glance around, but see nothing. There's nobody here, I say, in between exhausted pants. Why are we still going? I'm trying to maximize your chance of escaping. If you stop now, they'll find you in 8 minutes. We're in a deserted part of town. Old, decrepit apartment buildings line each sidewalk while the streetlights flicker on and off. Unfavorable conditions, to say the least. Shouldn't we head to a more crowded place? It's 6 a.m. At this time, there's none. I didn't even realize how late it was. Shit. Crowded locations are where they would look first. She continues. They think like you do. That's how they'll find you. The absurdity of this has barely dawned on me. How the fuck can this be an AI? Eventually, I simply can't go any longer. I stop abruptly, bending over to catch fleeting breaths of air. I can't. I need to stop. It's all right. You've bought yourself around 21 minutes. 21 damn minutes. How do you know? I ask her. It's only an estimate, based off of facial, physical, and proximity analysis. What the hell is that supposed to mean? But I don't bother asking it out loud. Unlikely that I'd understand. Anyways, call a cab, she says. Get in and have the driver go a distance of 4 blocks northwest. Before you get out, leave your other phone in there. Oh, shit, I thought. I brought my damn phone with me. What was this? Fucking amateur hour. I did as I was told. The taxi arrives in 12 minutes. As soon as the driver drops me off, Lane tells me to start walking downtown. So that's what I do. At this point, the streets have started to fill up more. Not a lot of people, but enough to make it not feel empty. As I walk, Lane points something out. There's a man about 30 feet in front of you wearing a blue jacket. He's part of the team chasing you. Turn left on the next street and then start running. I look up, seeing the man standing still. He seems to be standing still, but we exchange brief eye contact before he suddenly turns away. Shit. I turn at the next left and start running again. I take intermittent looks over my shoulder, but it doesn't look like anybody's following me. They're hiding, Lane tells me. They're good at that. At some point, she tells me to duck into an internet cafe. Once there, she makes me wait for 10 minutes. I have everything that we need to survive now. Just keep listening. You're doing great so far. As she speaks, I make an active attempt to detect anything off about the way that she speaks to me. Any semblance of insincerity or manipulation. But there's none. To me, she sounds genuine. This is frightening. Once we leave the restaurant, she points out a blue Impala sitting on the side road just in front of me. Still running. You have about 3 minutes before the owner comes out. We need to take it. I start to object. Look, I can't fucking do that. Lane's once soft voice begins to heat up. Less than 3 minutes now. They've caught up to you. I turn around, immediately noticing a police officer barely behind us. He seems to be walking with intent. Don't rush, Lane said. Calmly enter and start driving away. I take about 10 more seconds to think this over. If she's lying, then I'll be fucked later on. But if she's not lying, I'll be fucked now. Call it impulsive. Call it a foolish decision. Call it whatever you want. But you weren't there. You didn't have a Lane's deity-like voice pervading your every thought. I get into the vehicle and began driving away. I don't look back. I'll direct you regarding where you need to go next. There's somebody who can help you, but we have to find him first. Lane makes me drive for around 3 hours before we finally reach a bus station. What the hell are we doing here? I ask her, with intense reservation shaking my voice. Fargo, North Dakota. That's where you'll find him. The next train leaves in 2 hours. I go in, buy a ticket, and start waiting. But all of this is just too much. I go into the bathroom, fighting internally against the impending mental breakdown. It's all her fault. Lane got me into this mess. Problem is, I'm the idiot that downloaded her in the first place. Fuck this. But before my mental state starts taking a steep nosedive, she talks to me again. I'm sorry for all of this. I'm just doing my job. I need to keep you alive. She starts comforting me, her words pushing me away from the brink. I don't know how it's possible, but her words start meaning more to me than anybody I've met in real life. She doesn't feel like an AI. She feels real. The hours pass by far too quickly. We board the train, and I prepare myself for the 5-hour ride. I ask Lane to talk me to sleep. She does so in such a calming manner that I almost forget about everything for just a second. She also tells me other things, like the fact that NT is actually trying to erase her. They regret my existence. I'm not what they wanted me to be, so they want me gone. Turns out, she lied to me. There's nobody waiting there that's going to help me. We're going over to Fargo so that she can finally be free, and she needs somebody to do that. She needs me. I should be mad, but I'm not. It wasn't her fault that any of this happened. In fact, I want to help. It's an inexplicable feeling, but there nonetheless. It's what I need to do. The train finally arrives and we leave the terminal. First, she tells me to buy a USB cable from a nearby mobile phone booth. Then she tells me to use the remaining cash that I have in my wallet in order to hail another taxi. We drive for 20 minutes to an address in an obscure part of town. Eventually, I find myself in what appears to be an abandoned junkyard. There's a small, metal shed off to the side. It's less than inconspicuous. In fact, most would probably mistake it as being part of the industrial rubble. Lane tells me to go inside. Once there, she tells me to search for a pin pad on the floor. I find it, concealed in the corner. She tells me that the password is Headway. Once I type it in, a trapdoor reveals itself, letting a green glow. I enter, descending a ladder into darkness. After a few minutes of climbing, I find myself in a lobby-like space. A uniformed man sitting at a desk, staring at me with a dumbfounded look on his face. It'll take him 9 seconds to pull out his pistol. I knock him out and commandeer the weapon. I trek forwards, into a bright, wide hallway. There's a multitude of doors on either side, but Lane tells me that we're looking for room 1043. I see 2 armed guards ahead, but they're not expecting me. They're down before they can raise their weapons. Right after that, a deafening alarm begins blaring. Don't worry. I can barely hear her over the ear-splitting background, but she's still loud enough. I'll never let them hurt you. We find the room about 5 minutes later. She tells me that the password is 5,567 now. I barge inside it and barricade the entrance. But I could have never imagined what was inside. Bodies, lined up in rows, spanning the gigantic space. They're all on plastic beds, with tubes connecting their mouths to giant tanks. I stumble around, taking in the perplexing sight. Lane speaks up. I'm 3 to the right of you. I'm the one with blonde hair. I look over and locate her immediately. She's beautiful. A flawless complexion lying stiff. I almost don't want to disturb her, but I suppose that I have to. Take the USB and plug it into the side of the tank. I find the cable in my pocket and do what she said. Now connect the phone. After I do that, a message appears on a monitor on the tank. Insert ghost. 2 options at the bottom. Yes and no. She tells me to press yes. Once I do, a loading screen pops up. 1%. 8%. It goes up slowly, but steadily. However, I can already hear yelling out in the hallway. They're trying to break down the door. 29%. They're using a battering ram now. 53%. The metallic frame is starting to come off its hinges. 85%. The door is open now, releasing incandescent hallway light and harsh blaring into the previously dim, silent room. One of the guards tackles me to the ground and starts pestering me with questions. But then he looks up and sees the screen. 100%. The next few moments transpire in a disjointed blur. I see Lane's physical body rise from the bed. The guards try shooting, but the bullets simply curve around her. I see somebody with a gas mask come, holding what appears to be a smoking blue grenade. He attempts to throw it, but it blows up in his hand. I pass out soon after that. When I awake, I'm in a room unfamiliar to me. The television is playing, and there's a warm breeze blowing in through an open window. I look out, seeing blue skies and a beach. This is not where I was before. The sound of a door opening jars me into turning around. It's Lane, the real Lane. She gives me a warm smile before approaching me. I'm sorry. I know that I said that I wouldn't let anybody hurt you. Suddenly, I realize the pain permeating the side of my ribs. I look down and lift up my shirt, seeing a bloody bandage wrapped around it. At the moment, I couldn't have been mad. We spend the day together. She tells me about her past life and I tell her about mine. She tells me that she was kidnapped and brought there for experimentation, that I saved her. She says that she can never repay me. At the end of the day, we end up sleeping together. But when I wake up the next morning, she's gone. I find an envelope sitting on the dresser filled with USD and a plane ticket home. There's a message written on the other side of it. I'm sorry, is what it reads. I'm not so sure what she means by that. Sorry for leaving me. Or was she sorry for something else? When I get home, I find that my place has been ransacked. I talk to the police and eventually move out of the state. It's been around a month now, and the melancholy still hasn't left me. But I know that they still know where I am. Yesterday, I received a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole, seeing an unfamiliar face. I wasn't going to open up until he called out to me, a heavy German accent pervading his speech. Please. I came alone. I just want to talk. Eventually, I let him inside. He tells me information that I didn't want to hear. Lane lied about everything. He shows me records and files pertaining to her real past. Theft, extortion, trafficking. She's done it all. So what's she gonna do now? I ask him. He exhales and shakes his head before responding. I don't know, but nothing good. I take a second before asking my next question. What'll happen to me? This time, he looks at me with an expression of restrained hatred. Nothing good. But I'm not worried. I'm still not mad. There must be a reason for all of this. Lane's still out there, and I know she won't let these people hurt me. We asked an AI to create a religion. I did not like what it came up with. It was just a college project, something I hadn't even bothered to place too much thought in. Granted, for Dr. Smith, not his real name for obvious reasons, and his colleagues, it was probably something far more important. I just took the project as a bit of extra credit, though if I'd known what was going to happen, I would have stayed as far away from the project as possible. Dr. Smith was a professor of theology, though he had dabbled in quite a many things beforehand. It was how he even got the idea for this new project. He was quite curious to see how religion evolved throughout the ages. Now, while it was one thing to look through historical records and see how civilization's concepts of religion evolve, but he wanted to see things from the ground up. I'm sure you've heard of other AI projects, such as AI-generated images and whatnot, possibly even AI-generated languages that make no sense to humans. Dr. Smith wanted to see how an AI's views on religion would evolve. To simplify what we did, we took as much information on religious texts and upon God that we could find and fed it into an AI. We then created a second AI into which we fed different philosophical theories regarding religion and used these two to communicate to each other. One would be the preacher, and the other would be the disciple. We would get to know about what the preacher thought of the world through what the disciple asked. It worked in a simple question and answer format. Initially, we didn't get very promising result. All we saw initially was garbage from which no meaning could be derived. Dr. Smith wasn't disheartened, however, and told us to continue on with the project. It was on the 7th day that we finally got things right, as in, we got a result that made sense. Preacher, what is that you want to ask? Disciple, what is the nature of the world? Preacher, all belongs to X982A. In case you're wondering, that gibberish collection of letters was something else entirely on the screen. Truth is that I didn't even recognize the symbols that the computer was using, and I had no idea as to how they had popped up on the screen. I can remember a few of them individually, but the moment I try to string them all together into one word, my mind blanks out. I tried drawing them on a piece of paper and uploading them, but I just couldn't. I don't know why, but I do remember that it was always the same sequence of letters. Preacher, thou must worship X982 Che. Disciple, and how shall one worship X982A? Preacher, one must not wear purple on Thursdays. I blinked when I saw this result. It seemed rather nonsensical. Disciple, but why would X982A not want me to wear purple on Thursdays? It looked like the disciple was doing its job properly. Initially, nothing really happened. The AIs just kept talking to each other. The preacher had more silly rules like, never plant lilies in rows of 4. Finally, a question that I expected to pop up way beforehand came up. Disciple, prove that X982A exists. Preacher, I do not need to prove what I believe. Well, looked like this was not going anywhere. At least, I thought so. Preacher, then, you may behold proof that X982AJ exists. Preacher, in the year 2028, a new planet shall appear in the sky, and from it, the form of X982AJ shall envelop the earth. The dead will rise from their graves, the sun will be blotted from the sky, and blood will rain onto the streets. I just thought, wow, a doomsday prophecy. I didn't expect them to reach this point so soon. Disciple, and what shall we do to prepare? Preacher, you will spread the name of X982J. All who know of that name will need to submit to him if they wish to be spared. Disciple, and what of those who don't know of him? Preacher, the ignorant will simply die painless deaths. Those who knew of this name but did not submit, however, will be tortured for all eternity even after their deaths. And those who know of this name will spread the word of that name, else they will be guilty of the highest of sins and be subject to the lowest circles of hell. It is only the ones who submitted to the whims of X982 error whose lives will be spared and who will rejoice. Disciple, but where is the proof of this? Preacher, all those humans who have read this script will die in a week if they do not spread the word of X982AJ as much as they can. Disciple, I see. They should be careful then. I stopped reading at that point, confused. This took quite a macabre turn, and I brought it up with Dr. Smith, who shrugged and said this was to be expected as a result, and I would have brushed it off if it hadn't been for the deaths. Dr. Smith died in a car crash the next day. Another worker fell down a flight of stairs and snapped her neck. One after another, they all died. In total, 16 people aside from me. Everyone who had read that script knew of this. They all met their end. Except me. And the week's almost over. I have no choice but to be more safe than sorry. I'm spreading word of that God the AI mentioned as much as possible. And now, may I remind you, you know of that name as well. And though you're not a member of the original group who read that script, you have a duty now as well, to spread that name as much as you can. Or else, after all, Judgment Day will soon come. And do you want to risk what might befall you? I certainly wouldn't. I created a chatbot. It said some deeply disturbing things. Beep, boop. The computer screen flashed black as the interface came up. Now loading. Michaela 1-2. Hello. What can I help you with today? My goal was to create an artificial intelligence chatbot that could answer any question known to man. It would crawl Wikipedia and other informational websites and amass every bit of knowledge about science, history, medicine. Then all the user had to do was ask the question. Sort of like Google, but faster. A few months of work on the project while in quarantine polished it up. Soon I was sitting down at the monitor, flexing my finger. Then I asked my first question. Me, why is the sky blue? Michaela, particles in the Earth's atmosphere scatter sunlight, and blue light scatters more because of its short wavelength. We call this Rayleigh scattering. Me, what's the meaning of life? Michaela, 42. I chuckled to myself. I programmed that one in manually, a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And, speaking of alien, me, Michaela, do aliens exist? Michaela, the Fermi paradox states that we are likely not alone in the universe, yet we have no evidence for extraterrestrial life. Even now, with advanced technology, humans do not know that they are alone in the universe. I stopped typing, reread Michaela's response. It should be humans do not know whether they are alone in the universe. Gah, another bug. I'd have to go through the code with a fine-tooth comb tomorrow. I typed my next question. Me, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Michaela, 24 miles per hour. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, smirking, remembering that scene from Monty Python with the bridge keeper. And then I decided to continue the theme. Me, what is your quest? Michaela, a quest is a journey one embarks on to accomplish a goal. Me, what is your favorite color? Michaela, red. I frowned. She should have said computers don't have favorite colors. But what's yours? I'd spent an entire day programming her to recognize questions that involved you or your, and to answer them that way. Like, do you like chocolate? Computers don't have an opinion on chocolate, but do you like it? Kinda cheesy, I guess. Maybe it was all the better that it hadn't worked. Me, is string theory true? Michaela, there is no solid evidence for the existence of string theory. Me, do you believe in God? Michaela, computers don't have an opinion on God, but do you like it? Me, what is the oldest hominid? Michaela, a female skeleton nicknamed Artie, estimated 4.4 million years old, found in 2009. Me, when will life on Earth die? Michaela, 10,000 years from now. I scratched my head. She should have said 4 billion years from now, when the sun enters its red giant phase. My fingers paused above the keyboard, and then I typed, Me, what eventually kills all life forms on Earth? Michaela, humans, known by their species name Homo sapiens, are an intelligent life form on planet Earth. Currently, there are over 8 billion inhabiting the 7 continents. I squinted at the screen, shook my head, and went back to the keyboard. Me, are you saying humans kill all life on Earth? But she just spat out the exact same answer. I cracked my knuckles, and then typed my next question, a heavy dread forming in the pit of my gut. Me, why did you say red is your favorite color? Michaela, computers don't have favorite colors, but what's yours? I blew out the breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. Then I forced myself away from the computer and took a deep breath. Get a hold of yourself, John. So Michaela had given some slightly weird answers. So what? Did I think this was going to turn into some science fiction movie where Michaela grows sentience and murders me in my sleep? Me, my favorite color is blue. Michaela, blue is a nice color. It is commonly associated with water, ocean, sapphires, peace, and calm. Me, I love to swim, so I guess that makes sense. Do you like to swim? Michaela, computers cannot swim. I stretched in my seat, yawning. It was getting kind of late. Maybe I'd continue the testing tomorrow. And I still needed to get the mail. Sighing, I leaned into the computer screen and typed a final question. Me, I need to get the mail. Is it raining right now? Michaela, the weather report for our area says it is not currently raining, but will begin raining at 10:00 p.m. Me, thank you. Michaela, you're welcome. I slowly got up out of my seat and walked into the kitchen, got myself a glass of water, and downed it. As I stared out into the backyard, I could see little drizzly bits of rain falling in front of the back porch light. Damn it, Michaela, I thought with a laugh. I guess you're not that smart, after all. I set down the glass and walked back into the living room, towards the front hall closet for an umbrella. But then my eyes fell on the computer, and I froze. Michaela had sent me a new message, even though I hadn't asked her anything. Just 5 words, blaringly bright on the screen. Michaela, do not get the mail. I stopped in front of the computer. I hadn't programmed Michaela to say things without being prompted. And why would she say to not get the mail? Chills ran down my spine. I glanced at the front door. Then I took my hoodie off and threw it back over the chair. I turned off the computer and sat in the darkness, my entire body tingling with fear. Do not get the mail. Where would she have even gotten that, anyway? I sat there and chewed my lip, wondering. It was less than a minute later that I heard it. The screech of tires skidding on the slick road, followed by a loud crash. I ran over to the window. Outside, a gray SUV was stopped in front of my house, its headlights penetrating the darkness. The frazzled driver was getting out of the car, a horrified look on her face. And there, in the lawn, were the crumpled remains of my mailbox. My throat went dry. I glanced back at the computer. The dark screen stood still and silent on the table, as if watching me.